All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. Should be below the video if you're on a larger screen. To the right of the video if you're on a smaller screen. Or sorry, right of the video, larger screen, below the video, smaller screen. All right, so we'll start here with Donnie D. Says, should I make the same shoulder turn with a sand wedge that I do with a 7-iron? My hands are nice and deep above my right shoulder at the top with 7, but with sand wedge nowhere near. I mean, if you're making a full swing, sure, yeah. I mean, your full swing should be basically the same, right? So, yeah, full swing is going to be the same. But it's okay if it's a little bit shorter. It's fine as long as you know how far you're hitting it with whatever swing you're making. That's all that really matters. So you can take a shorter swing with your wedge if you want. It's totally fine. All right. So Robert O says in Clay's new video on body and position, he advocates setting up with already a bit of shaft lean so that the club is starting bent forward rather than center of body. This is contrary to what have been told prior videos. Please explain. What do you mean it's contrary to other videos? I don't think we have any video where it says you need to start with the hands directly in the middle of your body. A lot of it depends on your grip. So if you have a stronger grip, you're going to be more comfortable with your hands more forward, right? And if you have a weaker grip, you're going to be more comfortable with your hands more in the middle of your body. So really, if you have a stronger grip, I'd highly recommend I'd highly recommend the overwhelming majority of golfers are going to benefit from having a stronger grip because, one, it gets the hands more forward at address because it's going to get you more comfortable to be in that position. And two, when your hands are more forward at address, you're going to be more likely to get your hands forward at impact. Doesn't mean you are going to get your hands forward at impact. Just means you're going to be more likely to. So yeah, I guess I don't understand what's contrary. It's not what we, I don't know of any videos that we have where we say set up with your hands in the middle. But if you have a weaker grip and you're able to bow your wrist and to close the face and to get the hands in front with the closed face, let me explain that. So weaker grips, to have a pro-like impact position, an impact position where you're really compressing the ball, you have shaft lean, you're releasing the club out in front. If you have a weak grip, you're going to have to bow your wrist to make that happen because otherwise the face is just going to be wide open, right? So if I have a weak grip like this, where my lead hand's more on the side, trail hand's more on the side, at address, it's going to be most comfortable for me to have my hands basically in the middle of my body. When I come to impact, I don't want to have my hands in the middle of my body. I want to have my hands here. But if I keep the same wrist angles and I have my hands more in front, that club face is going to be wide open. So I have to bow my wrist to get that club face square. And you can go to YouTube and look at, tour players, that have weak grips. If you look at them, you're going to see bowed wrists at impact. Colin Morikawa, John Rahm, Victor Hovland. These are all players that have a bow or that have a weak grip, but are bowing their wrists. Difficult to do for the overwhelming majority of golfers. If it's something that comes natural to you, then yeah, do it. It's totally fine. Have a weak grip and bow your wrist. But the overwhelming majority of golfers it's just not going to be a natural thing. It's not going to be a thing that's easy to do. So we recommend to have a stronger grip. I recommend that the overwhelming majority of golfers have a neutral to strong grip because it just makes things a lot easier. So neutral grip golfers would be like Tiger Woods, Adam Scott. If you see Tiger Woods and Adam Scott, they're going to have slightly bowed to flat wrist angles, right? So if you look at Tiger at the top, he's going to have a flat wrist. He bows it a little bit as he comes down. It does flex a little bit. So if you look at him and kind of like the club parallel position in the downswing, you're going to see some bowing in that wrist. And then when he comes into impact, that it kind of flattens out. So that kind of matches up. A stronger grip, you can actually afford to have a little bit of cupping if you have a very strong grip. So like a Matt Fitzpatrick has a very strong grip. If you look at him at the top of the swing, he has a little bit of cupping in that wrist. And at impact, he has a little bit of cupping in that wrist. So generally, it's easier for people to have a little, have a flat to even a little bit of cupping in the wrist. A stronger grip makes that a lot easier to manage. It matches up a lot better with that. So, and when you have a stronger grip, your hands are going to tend to be more comfortable if they're more ahead. Because if you take a stronger grip where your lead hand's more on top, trail hand more under, right? If you try to put your hands in the middle of your body, it just feels very uncomfortable, right? So if you just relax, right, your hands are going to be more forward. And if your hands are more forward at address, it makes it easier to get the hands forward at impact. But largely due to a stronger grip. Because if I have a strong grip and then I early release and flip my hands, well, then my face is going to be really closed and I'm going to hit everything to the left, right? Usually what I see is people with weak grips and then they early release because the face is open because they have to early release to square up the face, right? Whereas if you have a stronger grip, now the face is more closed. I don't have to early release to square up the face. I can actually get my hands ahead and have the face square, right? So that's why we recommend that. Hopefully that makes sense. So BJ says, Q, I play in Virginia and frequently find myself in the first cut of the rough just off the fairway on our Muni course. This rough is 2 to 3 inches. When the ball is down in the rough, I really have a hard time getting the ball to fly in the air. I try to use a more lofted club, 7 or 8 iron, but still no success. Do you recommend a higher lofted club in these situations? Also, any other tips? Should I move the ball back in the stance? Yeah, so I would move the ball back in the stance to give you a clear, because well, when you say you're having trouble getting it out, what's actually happening, right? Are you chunking it? Are you topping it? Are you hitting it off the toe, hitting it off the heel? What's actually happening, right? So that's what I would investigate first. Usually when people are hitting out a deep rough, it's usually because the grass is so much resistance that they're not able to get to the ball. Right. So what I'd recommend doing is putting the ball more back in your stance. So that way you can have a more downward angle of attack on the ball. You'll be able to get it out. Higher loft definitely helps. It's definitely more difficult to hit lower lofted clubs out of the rough. So you kind of have to learn by doing, learn from experience and what you can get out of the rough in certain lies and, make a note of that. Know exactly what you're capable of doing. But yeah, put that ball a little bit back in your stance. Try to have a more downward angle of attack on the ball. And you'll more than likely, just by doing that, will likely help to get the ball more out of the rough more easily. Another thing is speed, right? If you don't have a lot of club head speed, it can be difficult to get out of the rough. When Bryson DeChambeau, he won the U.S. Open a few years ago. I guess I don't know how many years ago that was now, but I guess it was more than a few years ago. I can't remember exactly what the year was, but yeah, he has a ton of club head speed and he was just driving it down there. And, we know how US Open rough is. It is thick. It's probably thicker than anything most of us have ever played. And he just had enough club head speed to get through it. Right. Cause that rough really wasn't, if you have enough speed, it doesn't really, the resistance of the grass isn't really much, right? So yeah, if you have enough speed, it's not that big of a deal. So working on getting more club head speed can certainly help with that as well. The best thing you can do for that is to work through our 20-minute distance fix. That's our speed training course. So yeah, that's what I'd be kind of looking at. Your release might be a little bit of a problem as well. If you early release the club, you're going to tend to come in much more level with the ball. It's going to be hard to hit out of those deep lies. So working on getting the club to release more out in front, working on, the top speed golf system, getting the club to release out in front will help you do that as well. So those are some avenues, but just for immediate relief, what I recommend doing is play the ball more back in your stance, and you want to kind of hit down on it more to get it up out of there. Excuse me. All right, keep questions coming. No problem, BJ. Glad to help. Yeah, low club head speed and early release make it more difficult, but it doesn't make it impossible, right? So if you make that adjustment with your ball position on those and have the feeling of kind of hitting down on the ball more, it will help a lot. But keep in mind when you hit down on it more, it's going to come out lower, right? So if you it may make it difficult to get the 7-8 iron out of there, but you just got to learn from experience and to see what you can do at a certain lies. All right, so we got about 45 minutes or so left. If we got some more questions, if not, no worries. So John C says, I find that I'm having trouble having a good downswing sequence, starting the torso timing, followed by hands coming down, maintaining the wrist angle. Besides the stick drill, any other suggestions? Um, the step drill is a good one. The step drill is a really good one to help you to really what we want to do is we want to start the downswing from the ground up, right? So we push into the ground, with the lead foot. That gets the legs going, that gets the hips going, that gets the torso, the shoulders, the arms, the wrists, and the club. So yeah, working on the step drill is a good one. So the step drill, the way that works, feet close together, right? I'm going to throw this club back. As I throw the club back, I'm going to step forward. I want to land on that lead foot when I get to the top of the swing, and then that's what's going to start my downswing. I'm going to push into the ground. I'm going to come all the way around into a full finish, right? So getting that feeling of that's really the kind of the proper sequencing that you want to have. And then from there, transitioning that to like a practice swings with the same feels, and then doing that with a ball. No problem, John. All right, if you're just jumping on here, I'm just waiting for a question to be asked. We got roughly about 40 minutes left here, so I'll be on here till 4 o'clock. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. If not, no worries. Excuse me.
So John C says the driving ranges near me are all mats. How can hitting off of mats adversely affect my golf swing? They don't necessarily affect your golf swing. They just make you. They can just make it to where you have more. Basically, you can be oblivious to the chunk shots, right? So if you're coming in fairly level with the ball, meaning you're not chopping down on the ball with the club, right? You can hit behind the ball several inches, right? And really be none the wiser, right? And it'll feel like a great shot. The contact can feel great and all that stuff, unless you just have a really good feel for it. So it's not necessarily having an effect on your swing. It's just the feedback that you're getting is different than what real turf would do, right? If you hit the ground 3 inches behind the ball, most of the time that's going to be a chunk shot, right? But if you're hitting off of a mat, it won't be a chunk shot because the club won't dig into the mat, and then you may feel like you're hitting this great shot, but the reality is that you're not. It may be a chunk when you get on the course, right? So yeah, it's not necessarily, going to change your swing, the mats. I think the mats have their pros and cons, right? And what you can also do to kind of combat that, you can put something on the ground behind the ball. So like a towel. The thing that I like to use is a speed trap. So it's just this piece of plexiglass. It actually comes with little, foam bumper things too, to create kind of a path for the club to work through. So if you're coming, I don't have them handy here, but if you're coming over the top, like you'll hit, if you have the bumpers here, right? So you can put this on the ground, and there would be like a bumper like sticking out there. And if I come over the top, if I put the ball, where'd my club go? If I put this ball here, and then I have a bumper right there, if I come over the top, I'm going to hit that bumper, right? And I can also put it here. What I like about this the most is that if I come in and I hit the ground behind, I'm going to audibly hear that click sound, right? Whereas, normally I'm not going to hear anything. The club's just going to slide on the mat. I'm going to be none the wiser. You can use a towel as well, but the towel, what I like about this is you get that audible click, whereas with like a towel, it's soft too, like a mat. So it is a little different feeling when you hit it, but it may not be abundantly obvious whenever you hit it,
right? You may look at the video and see, oh, I'm hitting the towel, and then you don't even realize it. So I've had that before. Now, these are great. I don't know how much they are, but you can also use like a plastic cutting board, right? Because this is basically, it's just plexiglass is all this is, right? So now obviously a plastic cutting board isn't going to have the bumper things on it. There's other things you can do with it, with this. But for my use, the other thing I like about it is if I hit it way off the toe or off the heel, I'm going to hit the sides. I actually wish this was a little bit tighter. It wasn't quite as wide right here, because then you would have to kind of hit it quite a bit off the toe or the heel to hit the sides. But still, it's giving you that feedback as well, because maybe you're not hitting it back here, but if you come in here and you hit it off the heel, you're going to hit the side of it here. But you just put it about a club head in front, and if I come down, because it's raised up. Now, if you're using like a really thin cutting board, you would have it closer. I'd probably do half a club head, but this is like 1/8 inch thick plastic. A cutting board is probably going to be 16th inch, really thin plastic. So that would also work pretty well. So you can do that, and then if you hear that click, okay, well, I chunked that one. I may see the ball flight being really great, but I hit behind the ball. If that was really on the course, I'd be chunking. So that's just a way to get around the mats. I hit off of mats all the time. I think it's, like I said, there's benefits to it, especially like if you're working on something in your swing. It can be helpful as well, because it's easier to hit off of a mat than it is off the ground. So then you can kind of progress toward hitting off of real turf. All right, so Micah says, please talk about laid off at the top of the backswing and how it impacts ball striking. Also talk about how to correct it. Well, laid off isn't necessarily bad. All laid off means, so there's across the line, there's laid off, and then you could say there's in line, right? So laid off for a right-handed golfer would be where the club would be pointing to the right of the target, or excuse me, left of the target. Across the line, which would be pointing left of the target, and then in line would be basically pointing toward the target, right? So this would be across, laid off, and then in line. None of those are necessarily bad. If you look at pro golfers, there's a bunch of golfers that are across, there's a bunch of golfers that are in line, and there's a bunch of golfers that are laid off, right? It's all about how you manage it as you're coming down, right? So if you look at Jon Rahm, laid off, right? Jon Rahm is like this. He's laid off at the top, right? Daniel Berger, laid off at the top. Lots of golfers are laid off at the top. Across the line, lots of golfers are across the line at the top. You look at Bubba Watson, John Daly. Generally, what you're going to see, if you have a longer swing across the line, usually can work pretty well. If you have a shorter swing, across the line is usually not going to work. The reason is that if let's say I'm Jon Rahm, right? Well, Jon Rahm has that club laid off because he has a shorter swing, right? If he had that club like this at the top, well, he would be starting down with the club very, very steep, right? Since he's laid off, now he can start down with that club's already in a good position. Now, if I have a long swing, I'm like a John Daly, I'm way up here, right? Let's say I'm laid off, right? Well, if I'm John Daly and I'm really laid off, when I pull down on this club, I'm going to pull it down steep, right? Because there's forces acting on this club that are going to make the club steepen because the forces are acting on the club for a longer period of time because the swing's longer, right? So generally speaking, longer swings are good with the cross. Shorter swings are better to be laid off. And medium swings are typically going to be good to be in line or a little bit either direction. It's all about how you manage it. So it's not like one is correct and one is incorrect or vice or any of that. It's all about how you're bringing it down. So what you want to pay attention to is the shallowing line, right? So the shallowing line is a line that we draw from the ball up to the middle of the elbow. And it's only accurate if we have a good camera angle. So let's talk about the correct camera angle for this. Take an alignment stick, point it at a target. The way that I point it at a target is I'll set it on the ground, I'll get behind it, and then I'll take my club and I'll try to align it with my target. And you can just kind of move it around to get it in the right spot. Then when you take your camera, get your camera and have it directly behind it. So where if there's a laser coming out of your camera, it'd be going right through the alignment stick, right? And then when you go to address the ball, you're just going to have your feet up there close to that alignment stick, all right? Not like this. You're going to have them within an inch or two of that alignment stick. That's going to get you set up down the toe line. That's where we need it, down the toe line, all right? So we're going to be down the toe line, all right? That's number one. We need to have it at hip level, right? If it's not at hip level, then really it's kind of hand level is where we want it, which is at the hip level. Then if it's too high, it's too low. If it's on the ground, that's not going to work. If you hand it to your buddy and they're holding it like this, that's not going to work. It's going to give you a skewed angle, and this shallowing plane line is not going to be accurate. So that's why the camera angle is very, very important for this. And then the last piece is that you want to be far away enough to where you and the club stay in the frame. The farther away you are, typically, the better. So I would err on the side of being too far away versus too close. So those are really the three pieces. We want to be down the toe line. I went over how to do that, hip level, and then far away enough to where you and the club stay in the frame. And I would try to have it the same all the time, right? So I would actually kind of pace off how far you are behind it with whatever device you're using, right? So let's say you're using your phone, right, to record your swing. I would pace off how far away you need to be and just have it that the same all the time. So that way, when you're looking at camera angles to compare if you're improving or, stuff like that, you want to be able to compare apples to apples, right? If it's a different camera angle, it's not going to look correct, right? So once we have the good camera angle, we're going to draw a line from the ball through the middle of the elbow. And what we want to see is we want to see that club get underneath that elbow plane line, the club head, and then stay underneath that elbow plane line a little bit all the way down until it gets to the ball. That's ideally what we want to have. And then if we look at the hands, we want to see those hands working toward the elbow plane line and then getting on that elbow plane line with that club shallower to that elbow plane line all the way down to the ball. If you're doing that, you're good to go. Whether you're across, laid off, in line, no matter what position the club is at the top, as long as you're getting that club to work down, getting underneath that early and staying underneath it all the way down, you're good to go. You don't need to worry about what position you're in. Now, if you're someone who's, let's say you have a very long swing, right? You have a very, very long swing, like a on daily, right? And then you pull the club down. Well, look what happens. That club's going to go that way. I'm going to be above that elbow plane line, right? So if I have a really long swing, I would want to be a little bit across because when I pull down, that club is going to want to go that way. It's going to want to work underneath that elbow plane line and get to where I want to go. If I have a shorter swing, right, I probably want to be a little bit laid off because when I pull on that club, it's going to get that club where it wants to be. If I'm like this and I pull on that club, it's going to be steep, right? So you just have to play around with it to find what works best for you. What level should the camera be at again? Hip level, waist level, hip level, somewhere in this area. And again, I try to set it up the same way every single time. I would use a tripod with a phone mount. This is I actually just ordered one for my iPad because I wanted to start recording on my iPad. This is what they look like, the mounts. This is just a cheap one that I bought on Amazon. I think it was $10. But you can see it's got a little retractable spring-loaded thing that grips the. This would probably work for a phone too, to be honest. Yeah, it would work for a phone. With my case on here, this is a little bit too thick. But you can see how this holds my phone, right? So you can put this on, on a tripod. This hooks on this guy a tripod, the screw, the female part of it, right? And then this would just hold it, and then you just set the tripod at whatever height. You can buy cheap tripods on Amazon as well. You can get an Amazon with one of the Amazon tripod and a phone mount. I think it's $20. Like, it's not very. You don't have to break the bank to get stuff like this. So yeah, I definitely recommend. And this is small enough, folds up. This can just fit in your golf bag, right? Again, this is just on Amazon. There's all kinds of different ones. I've had good luck with all the ones. I just didn't have one for my iPad. I've had one for my phone, but not for my iPad. This one can hold an iPad and a phone. So, well, it can't hold a phone this way, but it can hold a phone that way. Should the camera be at hip level for both downline and frontal? Yes. Same cam. It's going to be the same height. Yep. Same height. No problem, Mike. Glad to help. All right, we got a little bit more time left here. If we got any more questions. All right, we got about 15 minutes left here. If we got any more questions. So Mike says, I'm signed up for the office hours reminders, but I don't get the reminders. Please advise. Please contact our support team. I'm not really sure what will be going on there, but if you contact our support team, they'll be able to help you with that. So if you just on the website there, if you go in the lower right hand corner, you can use the chat thing where it says help. You can select that, and that'll get you to where hopefully you can get those reminders. Now, keep in mind, yesterday and the day before, there were no reminders sent out because there was no office hours those days. Also, I would maybe check your spam junk folder. Maybe they're going in there for some reason. And I'd maybe double check the reminders, where you select those to make sure that you have them selected. I'm sure you've done all that, but just to double check, because I'm sure that that's what they're probably going to tell you, unless there's some underlying issue that they'll look into that if there's some underlying issue outside of those things. No problem, Mike.
All right, we got about 5 minutes left. If anybody has any more questions.
So Rick says, struggling with short game chips. How important is the correct bounce on a wedge versus the correct technique? Correct technique is way, 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 way more important. If you have correct technique, it really the bounce doesn't make as much of a difference. Um, but yeah, I would recommend checking out our chipping mastery course. Goes over the proper technique. I have to go right at 4, so I'm not going to be able to go over the correct technique. But if you go to the chipping mastery course, go to the homepage on the website. If you scroll down, you'll see a list of all the courses. You'll see the chipping mastery course. Go there, do those techniques, and you'll be good to go. Right. Thanks, everybody. I got to get going. But everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you next time.